Thank you for joining us today. Today, we're going to be talking about Viva Topics and how that can support a knowledge management strategy. Joined today with my business partner, Ben. Good afternoon, Ben.
Hello.
Hello. Right, Ben, let's cut straight to it. Who should be here and what are they going to take away from today?
Yeah, so as you can see, really this is for anyone that's frustrated that all their content and all of their knowledge is in the heads of experts, but very difficult to access and very much tied to those people. And if they leave, the knock-on impact of that. And typically if you're in a manager role or a knowledge curator. Now, the third thing actually is if also you work within an organization that's got quite a complex hierarchy, complex structure, or if you're finding that there's lots of information in information silos. So that's another key audience, I would say, for this.
Okay. And given that, what are people going to take away from today?
So yeah, so we'll run through how a topic supports the creation and curation of knowledge and how you sort of classify and promote certain topics. And then we'll show how topics get surfaced to your end users, and in particular, how that fits within the Microsoft suite of tools.
Okay. And there's been a lot of noise around the Viva Suite from Microsoft, topics being one of those things. Why are people even considering Viva Topics?
Yeah, so it's a really good point. So I think if we look at that accelerated time to productivity, if you think of those new joiners, we're working with an organization at the moment that is going through rapid growth. They're a professional services firm and they get lots of new joiners come into the organization and just helping them embed, and quickly access who are their key clients, what are all the different services and products that they manage and curate, having that ability for people to very quickly ramp up and get access either to the content or the experts in their organization. The next thing that Viva has as a key advantage over, say, third party applications is because it's a Microsoft tool, it's embedded into the tools that we're already using. It's already embedded into SharePoint, into email, into the Office applications, and that's only going to increase and continue moving forward. So the third thing is it allows you to pull together from a fairly disparate set of information into a single place. It helps create this single source of knowledge. Let's say you have a particular term about a product, but that product name is referenced in lots of different places. It gives you an all up view of all of that content and all of those people and brings it into a central place that people can easily access. And then the fourth thing is it helps you identify and connect with the experts. So those people that are creating and curating content that appears within those topics, it will allow those end users to discover who those experts may be. Let's say they've got a question about a particular product. They want to find out a bit more about it from someone. They can look at the topic, browse the content, but if they've got more questions, they can go and follow up with one of those identified experts.
Okay, so that's the big picture. I've been doing some research myself on actually what is the goal of Viva Topics? How is it going to support that journey? I think there's a few things that I pulled. So, what you can see on the left hand side of the screen is what happens if I type in a topic word. In this case, we've defined a topic word as SharePoint, and it's showing us a topic card which has information around what SharePoint might be known as, some text about explaining SharePoint, and then suggested people, content resources, and related topics which fit within that. So, if that's our goal, how do we get there? And we're going to cover where Viva Topics information comes up in the Microsoft 365 environment as part of this webinar. So the first piece is it's validated information. How do we make sure that the information we see has been reviewed by an expert? The second thing is it's delivered in context. So the context is I was searching, I was looking for it within our environment. It's popped up at the right time in the right place. I don't need to go somewhere else to go and find it. We've talked about curating of experts. So the experts have got involved and written this is not purely AI driven. It does need people. And I guess that supports the fourth point, which is AI is sharing the load. So AI is helping us surface what we should be talking about. It might be helping us surface the kind of information that might be useful. But ultimately, we want somebody in that process to validate the AI's got it right and add maybe the gaps and the nuances where that information didn't exist previously. So if that's the goal, Ben, let's think about planning first before we start turning things on and go into licensing and all those parts of a technical deployment. So, Ben, you've done this before. What are the considerations before we even think about this?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the key thing really is to recognize that the Viva Topics, it requires an existing knowledge management strategy. You don't literally just switch it on, otherwise you're not going to get the real value. If you've already defined a knowledge management strategy, Viva Topics is going to enhance it. Topics only signposts the content that already lives within your organization. It doesn't just become the content in its own right. So if you've already got your SharePoint pages, your documents, that wiki area, your knowledge repository, topics will signpost people to the content that you have. If you saw our previous knowledge management webinar, we defined the knowledge management process, and where we think Viva Topics fits in really well within that is at the early knowledge harvesting stage, where a knowledge manager or a subject matter expert is discovering what content there is out there, perhaps any content that's been flagged with a particular topic. So they're supporting the discovery phase. And then also with the distribution. So where you are actually then presenting and distributing out your knowledge content to your end users. The fact that topics fits within the Office suite and it is embedded in email and SharePoint and other kind of areas, it just enhances that mechanism to distribute the content. But the key thing to recognize is that it does require ongoing human effort. It is not purely a technology solution or a golden bullet to fix your problems. You do need to define the appropriate roles and who's going to be involved in maintaining and promoting and curating those topics on an ongoing basis.
And actually, this is the same message that we tell people when they look at intranet projects as well. It's great that you get all that news or content or topics on day one, but who's going to make sure it's still current in 3 months, 6 months, or a year's time?
Yeah.
I think that takes us quite nicely then on to the deployment piece and how we actually configure topics themselves. So let's get a bit more technical. Who do we need in this deployment?
Yeah, so as you can see, there's a few roles we need to consider here. The first one is that of the Microsoft 365 administrator. There is a fair amount, or at least an initial bit of setup that needs to be done within your Microsoft 365 tenant. And that is something that an administrator is going to need to do. The next role is that of the topics manager. So although this is kind of a new phrase that we've coined, really that is the knowledge manager that you may already have in your organization. So that person that's responsible for overseeing and curating the appropriate topics and the appropriate content and making sure that that content is being kept up to date. The third role is the topic champion. So think of your subject matter experts within your organization. They're the people that are going to go and create and enhance and support the topics that get created so that they can become relevant for everyone else. It's the relationship between a knowledge manager and a knowledge content creator. And then finally, you need to consider the user community. There is some training and awareness that needs to be passed out to your organization so that your users can actually benefit from these topics from being in place. They need to understand how they can do the searching, how they can reference the topic keywords within their content to actually get the most value out of it.
Okay, so we've got some key roles. Should we dive into the Microsoft 365 administrator? We've already brainstormed and gone through the considerations, what they need to look at. So appreciate, when we ran through this earlier, it is a bit dry, but it is also a central part of getting topics right from the outset. Now, licensing, we're going to come on to licensing. You do need a license. It's not part of your standard Microsoft 365 enterprise plans. So given that, Ben, shall we jump from here into our tenant?
Yeah, let's go and have a look at the admin center. Good stuff. So as I say, this bit is just a bit sort of dry and technical, but we're going to go through and configure some settings. So the first thing is we've come to our admin center and we can see under the settings pane on the left-hand side, there is the org settings option. So if we go and click into that, what we'll then see is a whole load of different tools and options that Microsoft have around the various areas that we can configure. We can also see SharePoint syntax. So that is a webinar that we're going to be covering next month. So we'll go into a bit more detail about that. But for the moment, we're going to be focusing on what is configured in the Viva Topics area. So if we click on Viva Topics, we've got 4 tabs that we're going to run through that will help tune that initial setup. So the first and most important is topic discovery. So what this basically means is, where within my SharePoint environment can I gather and try and find suggested topics? So typically you might either just have all of your SharePoint sites. So let's just go and have a look and configure our topic sources. So we might have all of our SharePoint sites. You might choose just very specific sites, so only selected sites. But what we tend to do is say all except certain or excluded sites. So what that means is by default, we're going to gather from everything. However, if we know that there are some fairly sensitive sites, maybe it might be something to do with a merger and acquisition project that you're carrying out, which is really, really sensitive. Or maybe you're going through a big company restructure or redundancy plan. You may want to actually exclude some of those sites from actually surfacing up potential content and potential topics. So what we can see is we're just going in and entering. So we've got, we've excluded the HR team and we're going to exclude a super sensitive project that we've created from here. Now, of course, you can even go and expand that with a CSV file if you've got a big list of sensitive sites that you want to go and remove. So we've chosen where we're going to get our topics to be suggested from. So now let's take a look at, sorry, just one final point actually about this. You may also want to exclude certain topics from being raised. So maybe you want to put in a profanity filter, for instance, or again, if you want to exclude certain phrases like redundancy or, secure words or classified customers that you're not allowed to talk about more commonly. So what this basically does is prompt you to go and configure in a CSV file. We're not going to do it here. The information's on Microsoft, so we can send links to that. But in short, you'll go and enter a list of all of the key phrases that you want to be excluded, and that will stop them from being suggested to your users. So now that we've configured our topic discovery, the next step is to look at topic visibility. And what this basically means is when we create our topics, who is actually going to get to see them? We talked about the end user community. Where is this actually going to get displayed and surfaced? So the default is that everyone can see our topics. But let's say that you're going to roll out a pilot program of Viva Topics and you want to focus on maybe one part of the business or a pilot wave, then you can configure some groups of pilot users so that only those users will be able to see this. Again, this can be useful and tied into this idea of not needing to license the entire organization. So you can give your Viva Topics licenses to people and then target those people as being able to see those topics as opposed to having to license everyone. So we've configured our topic visibility. There is one point actually, Rupert, if you just go into the advanced settings here, there is a configuration setting which says, are we going to allow our users to see topics that have been purely suggested, or do we want them to be curated? Now, typically, I would say the recommendation is to have only curated topics. So I would normally recommend you disable all suggested topics and only have your curated topics that your SMEs and knowledge authors have actually said, these are the topics we want to promote. And then we'll talk about how users can tune those suggested topics a bit later. So that is how our end users are going to experience this. The next thing is how we configure our topic champions and our topic managers that we've talked about. So the first setting, who can create and edit topics? These are our topic champions. Who are the people that will be able to go to the topic center and create new topics, take ownership of them and curate and publish that content? So again, this can be targeted down to security groups. And then separately, you have who are the people that will manage the overarching view of all topics? Who are the ones that will tune what good topics are, remove topics that aren't relevant anymore, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, so those are your topic managers. And then the final bit is, again, very dry here. It's just a one-time activity that needs to be done. The topic center is basically a SharePoint site that hosts all of this interactivity. So we need to create a SharePoint site. It's a one-time activity. In this case, we've gone with the Microsoft American spelling there of topic center, and we'll take a look at what that means a bit later on.
Ben,
So
thank you. That was super comprehensive. I think one of the things that I guess keeps me awake at night is what happens if this AI goes and searches a site and brings back stuff that I don't have permission to see? Am I going to see that as a topic suggestion? Am I going to see the files which is under that site as possible promoted content? How does that fit in?
that's a really good point. I think let's just jump back to topic discovery a minute. So you asked two questions there. Will I see potentially suggested topics from sensitive content? And the other question is, will I be able to see that sensitive content? So because this is all built on SharePoint, you won't get to see any documents that you don't have permissions to see. However, if those documents contain keywords that have become suggested as topics, it is possible that you could see those keywords. So that is why it's really important to define what the appropriate topic sources are. If you have really sensitive content that you just don't want people to be able to see at all, then you need to make sure those topic sites are excluded. However, despite that, if someone, for instance, if there was a redundancy topic that came up and someone clicked on it, they would only be able to see any documents within that if they had access to those underlying SharePoint sites or projects.
Okay, so that is quite an important nuance. Good to know. Okay, so just summarizing there what we've seen, we talked about the discovery, the visibility, the permissions, and ultimately the topic center, in our case, the American spelling. Once that's in place, that then lets the AI go and start doing its discovery.
Yeah.
So we talked about the next step, Ben, and the next step here is
So the next step is actually moving over to our topic champion. So what we're going to do now is for a topic champion, they're going to start curating and publishing some of these topics that they're suggested. Now, before we do that, we're just going to jump to our Knowledge Hub homepage here. So typically, as we said, this is something that is going to be enhancing your existing knowledge strategy. And if you saw our previous webinar, we defined this idea of a knowledge center. And we can see here that we have created a navigation structure that highlights our key solutions, sectors, and methodology. So all of these potentially will become really useful topics that we can then enhance content with. So we'll come back to that in a little bit. For the moment, what we're going to do is click off onto the topic center from our Knowledge Hub. So what we're looking at here, while it's just loading, is a sort of pre-set up page that Microsoft give you. And from the experience of a topic champion, the first thing they see is a series of suggested topics. What this basically means is Viva has said, we think you could be a good candidate to talk about this particular topic because we see that you've worked on some documents or some content where that thing has been found. So it could be that you contributed to documents around related to Northwind or Bellows, or for instance. And then what you get the option to do is choose whether or not you are going to be listed on that topic and if you want to take ownership of it and start publishing some content. If you don't think you're relevant, and then you could say, no, remove me, and you won't get prompted about that topic again. So now as we scroll down, we can see, we've got those suggested topics that I've now chosen that I'm going to be relevant for. And now we can see those topics that I've confirmed. Now we've just confirmed Northwind, so it's still saying suggested at the moment. But for those others that we did earlier, it's now saying, yeah, I've kind of confirmed that this is a relevant topic and I'm going to do something with it. Could we just go to the all button, please? If we scroll up a second, because we can see some of those other connections we created. So let's go and have a look at our SharePoint topic that we created earlier. We're going to click on that, for instance. Okay, so now I've confirmed the topics that I'm interested in, I'm going to work with. Now we come to the process of managing the topic page itself. So we're going to scan through this. The first thing we see is a description that's been pulled out and some alternative names. Now that description can come from a couple of different sources. The first, you can enter your own description. So let's say, as we'll see in a bit, where we're creating a brand new topic, you'll need to do that. The second, in this case, is that Viva will attempt to grab that description from Wikipedia if it's able to do so. So in this case, this description has automatically been pulled from Wikipedia. Now, the third way that this can happen is that if there are some documents in your organization and Viva thinks that what it is found is a definitive statement about what that topic is. It could be a particular product description that you have somewhere. Again, it will automatically pull that through from that document and suggest it here, and then you can tune it if you want to. So let's just go and edit this page, I think, Rupert, shall we? So we can have a look at how we can do a bit more configuration on this. So we've got that description, which has already been pulled through from Wikipedia, which is great. So now let's just go and have a little look a bit further down. So we can now see that we have a list of suggested people. Megan is on the list of suggested people, but hasn't been pinned yet. So it's found some potential people that are relevant, but then you as an owner can go and pin the actual subject matter experts to this. Good stuff. So we now have a new SharePoint MVP in the house. So that's great. So we've gone and added Megan there as one of those pinned people. So again, let's go a bit further down. So that's our key people that are relevant to this topic. The next thing is our key content. So we can see that there are some pinned files and pages that have already been added. So what we can actually see from this even is that we've got a link off to an external website. We'll have a look at what that means in a minute. But let's just have a quick look at our suggested files and pages. What we can see as we scan through that content is in the activity feed, how many times has that topic been mentioned? Now, because we've set this up already, a lot of the highly referenced content has gone through already. But let's say you've got a suggested document where that topic has been mentioned 5 or 6 times. That sounds like a fairly good document that you might want to pin or promote. So let's just go and do that. So we've pinned that document as a key document within our series of projects and knowledge areas. So let's say, for instance, that you do want to go and add some additional content and it doesn't appear in your suggested file. So what you can do then is go and add. And from here, we can either add from our existing SharePoint sites that we've got access to. So, that might be your knowledge hub, for instance, if you've already got a load of content that's been targeted or within your intranet. You can also search for content within here. And then finally, you can go and add a link. And what this allows you to do, let's say you have a separate external repository, or maybe, for instance, you're in an IT scenario where you have a separate IT help desk, perhaps on ServiceNow. You could go and link to that knowledge base article in ServiceNow and bring it back into this content here and just post in that separate link. So we're just going to leave that for the moment because I'm fairly happy with the content that we've got.
Okay.
Okay, so we've covered our people, we've covered our content. We can also tie this into relevant sites. So again, potentially having access to your knowledge hub, or if there's a definitive sales and marketing area where you store of your client presentations, for instance, that would be quite useful to pin that and make it available. And then finally, as we go further down, we can start to see the relationships between this topic and other topics. Now, what we can see, hopefully you can see this clear enough, is that some of these connections are confirmed. So they have a solid line. Whereas there are some other connections that have been discovered or maybe suggested by other topic owners. So let's say, for instance, we click on that knowledge management link there, Rupert, if you wouldn't mind, we can confirm that actually that is a relevant connection, which allows us to discover and navigate across different topics in the organization. Good stuff. And then the final thing is if you don't see a relationship that you think should be there, you can just go and add one yourself. So if you go and connect, you can go and search for another topic and show those relationships. So let's just republish our page and we'll just scan through and we'll see what that looks like. Okay. So again, now that we have this confirmed page, if someone comes to this area, they'll be able to go and traverse those relationships to see the other types of content that they might be interested in. Now, so for the role of the topic champion, so far what we've done is take ownership of a suggested topic, update it and publish it. But let's say, for instance, that I know that there is a topic that hasn't been shown to me or perhaps doesn't exist. So what I can do is actually create brand new topics. So we're going to go to the topic homepage. And the way we do that is simply a case of pressing new topic page. So we mentioned before in our knowledge management area where we've got a list of all of our solutions, perhaps our key clients, our methodology, the sectors that we work in. They would be really good candidates to create predefined topic pages and then link them back to our authoritative content within our knowledge center. So we'll go through, in this scenario, we've got to go through, fill in all of the details, pick and choose the people we want to add. Now, obviously, because we're creating this topic from scratch, there's no suggested content. So we'll have to go and manually add or search for that content and go and bring it in. So yeah, so we found a couple of pages there. Now, once we go through and create this and tune all of these people and these pages and this content that relates to this topic, over time, Viva Topics will be able to traverse that and discover more suggested content that could be relevant for it. So we've told it that we're interested in this particular phrase, and it will start searching and finding content that's relevant to that phrase and bringing it back and updating our suggested content for us. So once we're good, we'll go and publish this. So let's just go and do that. So I think that pretty much wraps up the role of the topic champion here. They are the ones that are going to modify those suggested topics, take ownership of them, and publish them.
Yeah. So just to summarize, Ben, we've seen there, firstly, the suggested topic versus the second example was a created topic from scratch. How the description could come either from an external source such as Wiki, or it can be created, or AI will start pulling that and try and find a good reference within the content within your existing SharePoint environment. And then we took that journey from this is a suggested topic to now becoming a published topic. And Ben talked about the configuration of how we set up topics in the first place to say, do we want suggested topics to appear to everybody, or is it only once they're published? Then that final point is, well, we've got all these topics. How can we start building relationships between topics? So it's about creating connections, whether that's manually or whether that's confirming what the AI has presented. And then that helps the end user start navigating the organization and seeing how all the topics are related to each other rather than seeing them as standalone entities. So, Ben, we talked a lot about a user using topics. If we're looking to roll this out, I suspect there's going to be more than one topic champion.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's just jump over. So in terms of how you go through and onboard your topic champion, so this is actually referenced from Microsoft content here. And really there's kind of two approaches to this. One, which is that, perhaps a bit more relevant for a small, medium enterprise. And then secondly, you've got the sort of enterprise wide. So for that small, medium enterprise customer, realistically, what you want to be looking at is addressing a particularly business use case. So let's say, for instance, you're struggling with knowledge management about your particular products. It's a really good use case for that. It does still require some form of topic champion or manager to define what the areas that we're going to focus on, and then bring on that early adopter program, do that training, narrow down and focus on those quick wins and that particular type of content. And again, it's useful where you don't already have a consistent knowledge sharing culture or limited knowledge resource. It helps you discover and promote that. Now, the alternative is in those larger enterprise wide customers. Now, really, you do need an existing knowledge program in place. You need to already have a decent knowledge sharing culture in place in an enterprise wide scenario. Otherwise, it's just going to end up with quite a lot of noise, causing a bit too much distraction. So, in that scenario, what you're really doing, if you've already got the culture in place, what you're focusing on is how topics is going to enhance what you already have. And this becomes much more of a helping and supporting a self-service approach to rolling out topics. So creating like a topic or SharePoint center of excellence where you can bring people on that early adopter program, but allow them to self-serve and take ownership of their own topics with some support from you and guidance and best practice.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And again, it's the same with intranets as well and SharePoint and Teams deployment. For smaller organizations, you can go and handhold department by department and help them on the journey. For large organizations, you need to create the capability, the self-service, the training so people can serve themselves when they're ready to do that. And I don't think there's any difference here. So we talked about topic champions, Ben, topic manager, before we get onto our end users.
Yeah, let's jump over to the demo again. So really the role of the topic manager is to make sure and basically tune Viva Topics so that you're getting the best value out of those recommendations. So jumping over to this manage topics page, we can see there's a whole load of stuff. We can see the confirmed and we can see the published topics. So these are the ones where someone has taken ownership and they've got some good content and it's been published. But we'll see there's a whole load of suggested topics that get generated. In fact, over time, Viva is going to generate more and more suggested topics. As we confirm topics or create our own, that will cause Viva to start discovering and can making, further connections. So when we go and have a look through this, if we go a bit further down, we can see we've already got one there for Western region sales. But actually, in terms of our suggested topics, Rupert, if we go, yeah, maybe it's a good point, just do a sort by, we can see we've got a few topics that potentially conflict or overlap. We've got Western sales, Western region. We don't necessarily want separate topics for each of those because it's just going to conflict and it creates more overhead. So what we would do is say, actually, we're just going to remove one of them and we'll keep the definitive one. And again, if there's certain phrases or things like, particular company names that we want to remove, or again, slightly conflicting or duplicate terms, and it allows us to just go and tidy that up. And all of that is just going to enhance the process of further topic discovery. I think something that is worth highlighting that you may have spotted this concept of an org topic score and a topic score. So the organizational topic score, what that basically means, broadly speaking, is that this topic has quite a large pervasiveness within the content of your organization. So there's lots of rich content. It's been surfaced up onto our topic page. If we go to our topic page, we'd see lots of suggested content and relevant content across the organization for it. So a high topic score is good, and it's showing that it's having a good impact. But the difference between org topic score and a topic score is the topic score is based on the permissions that you have as an individual to access that content. So at the moment, we can see the first few here have got a very similar number between topic and org topic score. But as we go down to executive planning, for instance, we can see org topic score is 27, but for me, it's only 11. What that means is that there is content that has been flagged up that I don't actually have access to see. Now, if I'm a topic manager, really what I would want to do in that case, if we just hover over that topic term, I can see that there's some suggested people here. So as a topic manager, what I want to do is approach one of those suggested people who may have a higher topic score for that area and say, hey, can you take ownership of this one and do some content? I won't have full access to the content that's relevant. So therefore, could take over and manage that particular page for me. So yeah, I think that summarizes it. It is also worth noting that there is a trend of topic generation over time. That's more for those people that like to see that data and see how it sort of, develops and increases over time.
So I think we're just separating the role of a topic manager and a topic champion. And appreciate in some organizations, the manager may be a champion as well. But really, their role is to take those suggested topics and confirm them and maybe identify the people who should be taking those forward from confirmed to the final stage, which is published. There's a second piece there around removing what's not relevant, whether it's a duplicate or maybe it's sensitive. And then the final thing, if you're wondering where to focus your energies, well, a good place to start would be organizing by topic score. So all those headings were clickable, and that will do the high to low ordering. And you can work out where to start with your topics. So that's the topic manager, Ben. We've created this content. It's been curated. It's validated. We've focused on the right things. How does Viva Topics surface itself as part of the end user experience?
So yeah, ultimately, everything we've done so far is irrelevant unless we actually bring this to our end users so they can benefit from it. So there's a few different places that we're going to cover in terms of how that works. So the first thing is we're going to go to Bing. So we're going to go to our favorite search engine, of course, and do a bit of a search for some content here. So the first thing we see, let's say I'm searching for a particular phrase. What some of you may be aware is that Bing is able to search, obviously, the web, but then also search inside your own Microsoft 365 environment here. So we can see that actually there's been a suggestion that comes up, and we can see that topic that is found within my organization. And in fact, if I click through into the bookmark here, it's actually going to highlight that the topic has become a key bookmark for that particular phrase within my 365 tenant. So if I was to search for SharePoint or a particular client phrase, the definitive result that will come back is that topic that matches it. And again, when I click on that, it's going to go and take me to my topic page where I can browse and access that content. So the next place that we're going to have a look is within email. Now, at time of publishing, I would say this is only available within Outlook for the web. It hasn't made its way into the Outlook client yet. But effectively, what we can do here is start to bring in topics into the body of our emails. And the way we do that is using hashtags. So people are quite comfortable with the idea of using hashtags in other areas. And what we can do is start using hashtags to reference our topics. So if there's a key phrase, a product name, or a methodology that we want to use when we're communicating across to our colleagues, for instance, then we can bring in those hashtags and we'll see that topic experience. So Rupert, if you were to just hover over one of those topics, now that you've just used that hashtag, it's actually brought up a topic card that we're able to see, expand through, see who the relevant people are, see any key resources I want to find a bit more about. And if I want to, I can click on view details and it will take me over into that topic page where I'll see more information about it. So we talked about the end user behaviors, and there's an element of training and awareness in encouraging people to start bringing in using these hashtags if you want to benefit from it. So that's Outlook. The next place is it within the Office applications. What we're going to do now is actually look at how I may benefit this within Word document. So we don't have the hashtag experience, but what we are able to do within Word, if I see a phrase that I'm not sure about, I can search it within Word. So if I go and click on that and go search, we will now see that topics come through as those suggested search results alongside other kind of content. So if I see a phrase I'm not familiar with in a document, I can just click on that phrase, search it, and I'll get a topic response as one of those, one of those suggested phrases, and that will go and take me to that topic page where I can find out a little bit more about it. So that's Microsoft Word. Now, obviously, a key aspect of where content is surfaced from and it is SharePoint itself. So let's go back to our Knowledge Hub, Rupert, if you wouldn't mind. So let's say I've got a case study or a news article that I've created. We've just won a particular deal with one of our top customers. I click on that news story, and again, I can start using these topics within the body of my news stories, which will go and link off to other key content. So again, it's, Lamna Healthcare is one of the key customers in this fictitious world. And if I go and hover over that, it will go and take me to that topic page and give me access to it, and I can find out a little bit more about it. So again, training your content authors on the use of bringing in these topics and these hashtags in so they'll get the full benefit of it.
Yeah, it's just worth saying you only need the hashtag. You don't actually need to start putting links or anything in there. So it is simply a matter of just doing hashtag and then starting your content, and it's going to pull that straight back again. So
Yeah,
it is
exactly.
super simple. It's not a difficult go and find the URL, cut and paste it in.
Yeah, and actually, potentially, what you may have just spotted there, Rupert, is that let's say you are a content author or content creator. If you do see a phrase, you can actually create a new topic, and that will go and take you through to that page earlier where you can go and set up that new topic from scratch. And now the final point is within Microsoft 365 search itself. So again, let's say people still haven't used the hashtags yet. People aren't fully familiar with it just yet. So the search capability within Microsoft 365 will again promote those topics. So an element of end user awareness is encouraging people to be aware that if you don't know a phrase, just click and search for it. Grab that phrase, chuck it into search, and hopefully you'll see some decent content, but you'll also get prompted definitive topic page that you can go to, and you can again confirm whether or not that was relevant or if it helped and answered that question.
Excellent, Ben. So you've covered all the key apps, but I think there's one which is missing, which is our dear friend Teams.
Yes, there is a missing one, isn't there? So it's not in Microsoft Teams yet. The understanding is that Microsoft are working on their roadmap to bring in topics into things like chat messages and conversations. What we will see is the Topics app, which is effectively a wrapper around the topic center. So that's a good way of promoting it to your topic champions so they can quickly and easily get back to that center and do their topic management. But what is meant to be coming on their roadmap, hopefully sooner rather than later, is the ability to bring in those tags. I think it's on the early adopter program you're mentioning, Rupert. It's not quite with us yet.
Yeah, it's getting there. It's getting there. Okay, so Ben, we looked at Bing, how it can search both the World Wide Web, as it were, and your own environment and bring those results together. We looked at Outlook on the web. We looked at Word on the desktop. We highlighted how SharePoint pages, if you start introducing hashtags, that's a great way of bringing topics into that. And also Microsoft 365 search, so be able to search across your Microsoft 365 estate. These are all ways that topics are being surfaced. There is more coming, including a Viva Topics Q&A as part of the Q&A piece. So that's all coming. In terms of licensing, I'm not going to spend too much time on this. The short version is there's a whole lot of Microsoft Viva products out there. As always with Microsoft, bundling is the way to go if you're looking to buy maybe 3 or more of these solutions. Topics as a standalone is £3 per user per month. As we said before, you don't need topics for everybody, maybe, or maybe you do. And if you are looking to move quickly and you see value maybe in topics and goals, then the bundle is the way to go to. And before the end of this year, from the 1st of Jan next year, the bundle shoots up to £9.07. There's a slide here, which we'll have as a handout, just gives you a couple of lines on each product so you understand what does what. And of course, there's Microsoft resources as well. So Ben, we've got a couple of slides and takeaways to help people. I think the first thing is the strategy piece before we get into the actual deployment. What are the takeaways around strategy?
Yeah, so Viva Topics doesn't replace your knowledge management strategy, it enhances it. It sits on top of what you're already looking to define. And with that means that you do need a well-defined information architecture already. You need to make sure that you've thought through and structured the content as much as you can, factoring in permissions, what is authoritative content versus maybe where content is referenced, to then get the best value so that topics can expose that to your users in a seamless way. And then the final thing is, don't just rely on the topics that are discovered. If you know that you've got key phrases, key solutions, key products, create those topics in advance, because what that will do is actually tune the artificial intelligence to help it discover and understand what additional topics may be suggested around that core set that you've passed in.
Okay, so that's the strategy piece. I'm just going to cover a few of the deployment takeaways. So we talked about licensing. You don't need to include everybody. That might get you over the edge in terms of your ROI. The security, consider which parts of SharePoint are going to be included, which parts you're going to exclude, and the same with the terms. The rollout piece, that's going to depend on the culture of the organization and also the size of the organization. Is it that big bang where you're going to create a center of excellence where people can understand how to curate topics and self-learn? Or is it more of a handheld phased approach where maybe you go around department to department and help people get their topics published? Humans are key. I've seen so many projects, particularly SharePoint projects, where there's so much energy at the beginning, but then without that ongoing user community, the topics go stale or internet news goes stale, whatever it might be goes stale without them. So this is an important part going forward. And then the adoption. So educate the value of hashtags, make sure people are aware of how to use them, where topics are going to appear. So that's a key part, how it appears in Outlook, how it appears in news articles, for example. So last piece, there is a couple or three resources here to support you. The Adoption Center from Microsoft, so they have a resource library there. One of the big resources there is the PDF adoption guide. It's 58 pages. It's pretty hard going. I looked through it to see if there's some things that we could take away from this session. And really, we started from scratch. And then finally, the Microsoft Learning Path. It's a couple of hours. It's on learn.microsoft.com. These links will all work. So you can go and do that as a route. Finally, before we wrap up, open to Q&A. So feel free to type a question into the chat. I believe you can do that. Ben, there's one question which I've got, which is around sensitivity labels. Do they play a role in this?
Yeah, absolutely. So it comes back to that topic discovery. And one of the things that we didn't necessarily showcase at the time, let's say, for instance, you've defined a whole load of sensitivity labels, things like highly confidential, and you've applied them to certain projects within your environment. You can configure topic discovery to say exclude any content from sites that are marked with these particular sensitivity labels. So realistically, that is a much better approach than having to go and manually set each individual site that you would want to exclude. Simply define your sensitivity labels and ensure that they're actually deployed to your site. And that has all sorts of other advantages, which we can cover in a separate webinar, to be honest. But then with that, it will allow you to go and ensure that the right content is being surfaced from the right places.
So with a good information architecture, each site would have its own sensitivity label. They'd be common across the organization. So you could easily say if something's marked as confidential, that's probably the kind of thing that we don't want to scan, for example.
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay. Well, looks like there's no other questions. So just a final slide. If this was useful to you, if you want to get into knowledge management or if you want more into Viva, then information management workshop might be the right thing for you. We help organizations start their digital transformation journey with SharePoint, with Teams, with this 4-step approach, which we run over a couple of workshops. So if that's interested, do get in contact with myself. But otherwise, thank you very much for your time this lunchtime.